Today, let's dive into one of the most incredible stories ever told, the story of David. We're going to trace his journey from a shepherd boy nobody knew all the way to becoming the legendary king of Israel. And let me tell you, it's a story with some unbelievable highs and some truly devastating lows. Seriously, think about that for a second. Have you ever been in a situation where the odds just felt completely and totally stacked against you? If you've ever felt that way, then you've got a lot more in common with this ancient king than you might think. Let's get into it. All right, so our story kicks off in this little town of Bethlehem. We meet a man named Jesse, and he's got 8 sons. And the youngest one, the one who's kind of always in the background, that's David. Now, while his older brothers are out there looking like warriors, David's job is, well, he's a shepherd. But you gotta understand, this was way more than just watching sheep. He was out there, all alone, learning to be brave, fighting off lions and bears to protect his flock. This was his training ground for greatness, and nobody even knew it. Then, something completely out of left field happens. The prophet Samuel, who was sent by God to find the next king, shows up. He looks at all of David's tall, strong, impressive brothers and passes on every single one of them. Instead, he asks for David. And in this quiet, secret ceremony, he anoints this shepherd boy as the future king. Can you even imagine the shock? The journey had started, but for now, it was a total secret. So, next up is the moment that literally launches David onto the world stage. Israel is at war with their rivals, the Philistines, and the entire army is completely paralyzed with fear. Why? Because of one man, a giant named Goliath, who comes out every single day just to mock them. And look, the matchup here is just absurd. On one side, you've got Goliath, this massive, battle-hardened warrior decked out in armor, carrying a spear and a sword. And on the other side, David, a teenager who's never seen a real battle, armed with nothing but a shepherd sling. Nobody, and I mean nobody, thought he had a prayer. But David's confidence wasn't about his own strength. Not at all. As he walks out onto that battlefield, he basically draws a line in the sand. He says, this isn't about swords and armor. This is about faith. He was absolutely convinced that God was fighting on his side. And then, with just a single stone from that sling, David takes Goliath down. Just like that, the impossible happens. Faith beat fear. Courage beat size. And in an instant, the shepherd boy from nowhere became a national hero. But you know how these things go. That incredible victory, that sudden fame, it came with a very dangerous price. Because while the people were celebrating, the current king, King Saul, was watching, and he did not like what he was seeing. The crowds started singing songs, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. And that little chant just lit a fire of jealousy in Saul. The king who had once admired David now saw him as a rival, a massive threat to his throne. His paranoia took over, and David's mentor became his hunter. So this kicks off this long, brutal chapter of David's life, where he's basically a fugitive. He's on the run, hiding in caves, hunted by the king's army. He gathers this loyal crew of misfits and outcasts around him, and here's the craziest part. On 2 separate occasions, he gets a wide-open chance to kill Saul and end it all, and both times he refuses. He won't harm the man he still sees as God's chosen king. This whole nightmare only ends when Saul finally dies in a different battle. With Saul gone, the way to the throne is finally open. That secret promise, made to a young boy in a small town all those years ago, well, it's about to become very, very public. David would go on to rule for 40 years. 40. And in that time, he didn't just keep things afloat. He took a collection of divided, bickering tribes and forged them into a powerful, unified kingdom that was a real force to be reckoned with. So how'd he pull it off? Well, first, he gets all the tribes to agree and is anointed king over the whole nation. Then he makes a brilliant military and political move. He captures Jerusalem, which was a neutral city, and makes it his capital. And maybe most importantly, he brings the Ark of the Covenant, the symbol of God's presence, into the city. All of a sudden, Jerusalem isn't just the political capital, it's the spiritual heart of the entire nation. And it's during this golden age that God makes this absolutely stunning promise to David. It's called the Davidic Covenant, and it's basically a divine guarantee that David's family line, his kingdom, and his throne would last forever. This promise would become a central pillar of hope for centuries to come. At this point, David seems untouchable. He's a genius general, a beloved king, a man people said was after God's own heart. But this is where the story takes a dark turn, because it's right here, at the absolute peak of his power, that David faces his toughest enemy. And it's not a giant on a battlefield. It's the man in the mirror. This really is the critical turning point. His armies are off winning wars, and David, he's at home, relaxing. He's powerful, he's successful, he's comfortable. And it's in that moment of ease that he makes a choice, which leads to another choice, which leads to a whole cascade of decisions that will nearly destroy everything he's built. The story is just chilling. It starts with adultery, with a woman named Bathsheba, but then she gets pregnant, and David panics. So he tries to cover it up by bringing her husband, a loyal soldier named Uriah, home from the war. But Uriah is a man of such integrity that he refuses to enjoy the comforts of home while his brothers are sleeping on the battlefield. When that plan fails, David's cover-up escalates from deception to cold-blooded murder. He sends a secret order to have Uriah abandoned on the front lines of the very next battle. And for a while, David thinks he got away with it. He marries Bathsheba, and life goes on. Until the prophet Nathan shows up. He tells the king this story about a rich man who steals a poor man's only beloved lamb. David is outraged by the injustice of it. And right then, Nathan points his finger at the king and delivers 3 of the most devastating words in history. You are that man. And the fallout? Wow. It was catastrophic. Even though God forgave David when he repented, the consequences were very real. The child he had with Bathsheba died. His own family was torn to pieces by violence and rebellion, and it all ended in a heartbreaking civil war led by his own son, Absalom. So where does that leave us? How do you make sense of a person like this? A hero and a murderer, a faithful servant and a profound sinner. To really get a handle on his legacy, you have to look past his incredible achievements and his terrible failures and look at his heart. David's legacy is just immense, and it's complicated. He set the standard for what a king should be. All future kings were measured against him. The raw, honest, and beautiful poems and prayers he wrote, what we call the Psalms, have been the prayer book for millions of people for thousands of years. And of course, through that divine covenant, his family line is the one that leads directly to the promised Messiah. And this right here is the key. The reason he's remembered as a man after God's own heart isn't because he was perfect. Far from it. It's because when he was confronted with his own darkness, he didn't double down. He didn't make excuses. He just broke. He confessed his sin, and he genuinely, deeply repented. His greatness wasn't in being flawless. It was in his humility. And that's really the question David's life leaves us with, isn't it? It pushes us to ask what really matters. Is true greatness found in having a perfect record, never making a mistake? Or is it found in something much harder, much more human? A heart that knows how to say, I was wrong, and is willing to turn back. It's something to think about.